If you're thinking about buying a Tesla Model Y in the 2026 model year, chances are you're obsessing over the usual configuration questions. Do you stretch for the performance model? Do you stick with the more efficient wheels or go big for the sportier look? Do you splurge on the white interior, opt for full self-driving, or stay sensible with the base options? Those are the decisions Tesla's website puts right in front of you, the ones that feel exciting and tangible. But an increasing number of analysts, used EV dealers, and data from the first decade of mass-market electric cars point to something else entirely as the real long-term differentiator. It's not the badge on the trunk, not the wheels, and not even the 0-60 time. It's the one thing you can't see, and often can't even choose explicitly, the battery that's actually inside the car. The title of this story says it bluntly. Why your Model Y 2026's battery type matters more than trim for long-term value. That's not just a catchy line. As electric vehicles age and the used EV market matures, the chemistry and design of the battery pack are increasingly becoming the single biggest factor in how useful, desirable, and valuable a car remains 8, 10, or 12 years after you drive it off the lot. There is one important caveat before we dive in. Right now, full official details of Tesla's 2026 Model Y lineup are not public. Trims, names, and exact specifications can change. But the fundamental direction is already clear from what Tesla and its rivals are doing today, and from how batteries in existing Model 3s and Model Ys are aging in the real world. The story here isn't about guessing exact future options. It's about understanding the physics and market forces that will apply no matter what Tesla calls the trims in 2026. To understand why the battery type can matter more than the trim, picture this scene at a used car lot or online marketplace in the mid-2030s. You're looking at two Tesla Model Ys, both from the 2026 model year. At first glance, they're twins. Same paint, same interior color, similar mileage. One of them, when it was new, was the better spec, the kind that gets all the YouTube thumbnails. Maybe a performance variant with bigger wheels, upgraded suspension, and that badge that quietly says, "I paid more." The other is a more modest configuration, a base or mid-range trim that never drew much attention when it launched. But then you look at the numbers that actually matter in 2036. The first car, the one with the flashier trim, has lost a large chunk of its original range. Maybe it can only manage around 60 to 65% of what it did when new. Fast charges, hot summers, frequent 100% top-ups, and high-speed driving have taken their toll on its high-energy cells. The second car, the one that never boasted about performance, is still delivering 85 to 90% of its original range, even though it's the same age. Its owner charged it every night, used it in all seasons, and the car's battery chemistry simply handled that life better. When you imagine yourself as a used car buyer, the question answers itself. Are you going to pay more for the badge that says performance, or for the car that still gives you an extra 70 or 80 miles of useful range on a full charge, with a chemistry known to handle many more cycles? This is the shift that's quietly happening in the background. Long-term value in EVs is moving away from visible trim and toward invisible chemistry. To see how we got here, it helps to separate what you see on the order page from what's really doing the hard work under the floor. On Tesla's website, trims are front and center. Traditionally, for the Model Y, you've had some mix of a standard or base model, a long-range all-wheel drive version, and a performance variant. Each step-up offers more acceleration, more range, or more features. You're given a clear, emotionally engaging set of numbers: 0-60 in X seconds, top speed, estimated range, infotainment, interior upgrades. That's how the company markets and how most buyers think. But Tesla, like every modern EV maker, is also making a second, quieter set of decisions. What sells, what chemistry, which suppliers, which pack layout. Those choices are not always specified on the configurator, yet they dictate how sensitive the pack is to fast charging, how many cycles it can endure before losing a quarter of its capacity, how it behaves in the cold, and how it likes to be charged every day. Right now, across its global lineup, Tesla uses more than one kind of battery. Many Model 3 and Model Y variants use high-nickel chemistries like NCA or NCM. Lithium-ion cells rich in nickel, with cobalt and manganese or aluminum in the mix. These are energy-dense cells, great for squeezing maximum miles and performance out of a given weight. Other variants use LFP, lithium iron phosphate, cells, a different chemistry that trades some energy density for robustness, lower cost, and longer cycle life. In some factories and trims, especially in the United States, Tesla is also rolling out its larger format 4680 cells in structural packs. For now, if you lift up the floor of a Model Y, you might find traditional 2170 cylindrical cells, or newer 4680s, and those can be paired with different chemistries and pack designs depending on where the car was built and which trim it is. By 2026, it's very likely that this mix-and-match strategy will be even more pronounced. Lower price trims may lean more heavily on LFP or other durable chemistries. Long-range or high-performance trims will probably continue to use high-nickel formulations or improved successors because they still offer the most miles and the most punch per kilogram. The exact labels may change, but the underlying pattern is clear. Not all Model Y 2026s will age the same way. Battery type isn't a stylistic choice. It's an engineering trade-off. Understanding that trade-off is key if you care about what your car is like in 10 years, not just in the first 6 months. So what in this context does battery type actually mean? It's easy to think of batteries only in terms of size, 60, 70, 80 kilowatt hours. That's capacity, and it drives the official range number. But the long-term story depends as much on chemistry as it does on size. The dominant high-nickel chemistries in Teslas today are very energy-dense. They're great for giving a long range or performance Model Y that 300-plus mile rating people crave. They're also capable of delivering the kind of power needed for quick acceleration runs and fast charging. The trade-off is that, over many years, they tend to be more sensitive to how they're treated. Keeping them at very high states of charge, frequently fast charging to 100%, or driving and charging in very hot conditions can accelerate degradation. LFP, by contrast, is heavier for the same amount of energy. A car with an LFP pack of the same weight as a high-nickel pack will likely have less rated range. But LFP is notably more tolerant of being charged to 100% on a daily basis. It can handle many more charge-discharge cycles while retaining a high fraction of its original capacity, especially in moderate climates. It is less prone to certain safety issues under abuse and doesn't rely on nickel and cobalt, which are both expensive and politically complicated to source. For everyday drivers who commute, charge at home, and rarely need to go from empty to full in a single blast at a fast charger, LFP's strengths map closely to real-world use. Overlaying chemistry is the question of cell form factor and pack design. Tesla's conventional 2170 cells, used in many current Model Ys, are proven and well understood. The newer 4680 format aims to cut costs, improve manufacturing efficiency, and integrate the pack more tightly into the vehicle's structure. That can improve rigidity and reduce weight at the vehicle level. The cooling design, the way the cells are arranged, and how easily heat is managed inside the pack all interact with chemistry to influence how the battery ages. But for an owner, the single biggest practical difference you'll notice over the years remains how much capacity and performance the pack retains. And that's where chemistry and usage habits overshadow trim and interior features. So what do we really mean when we say long-term value in this context? For a gasoline car, long-term value might be about rust, engine wear, maintenance history, and brand reputation. For an EV, all of those usual used car considerations still matter, but there's a new central question. How much of the battery is left, both in capacity and in confidence? Long-term value for a Model Y 2026 will hinge on how much usable range it keeps after 8 or 10 years. How simple your daily charging habits can be without feeling like you're slowly killing the pack. How reliable it feels once the battery warranty has expired. And how all of that translates into resale price when you decide to move on. Data from hundreds of thousands of Teslas on the road today help fill in this picture. In general, most Tesla batteries lose a modest amount of capacity in the first few years, often around 5 to 10%. Then the curve flattens. High-nickel packs, when treated gently, can still be at roughly 80 to 90% of their original capacity after 8 years or more. LFP packs, where data is still accumulating, are showing very promising behavior as well, with many owners reporting high retention even after frequent full charges. The pattern that emerges is this. Both chemistries can last a long time, but high-nickel packs care much more about how they're used, while LFP tends to be more forgiving, especially of regular charges to 100% and lots of shorter cycles. That difference becomes critical when you compare two owners. Imagine one Model Y long range with a high-nickel pack, bought by someone who road trips constantly, lives in a hot climate, and fast charges aggressively. Now imagine another Model Y with an LFP pack bought by a commuter in a moderate climate, charging to full overnight at home, putting on similar miles but in gentler conditions. A decade later, you can easily see a gap where the LFP car retains significantly more usable range than the high-nickel car, even if both started life with different trims and different EPA-rated ranges. At resale time, the LFP car may look, to a savvy buyer, like the more valuable asset, even if it was the cheaper model when new. Daily charging habits tie directly into this. Tesla itself, for its LFP vehicles, has explicitly told owners that charging to 100% daily is fine and even recommended for calibration. For its high-nickel packs, the advice has long been to charge to around 80 or 90% for everyday use and reserve full charges for road trips. That isn't just a suggestion. It reflects the underlying chemistry. For a high-nickel pack, living at 100% day after day is simply tougher on the materials inside the cells. So if you buy a 2026 Model Y with a high-nickel pack and constantly need to top off to full because your commute or lack of home charging demands it, you're fighting against the natural preferences of the battery. Over years, that will show. LFP, meanwhile, acts differently. If a 2026 Model Y base trim comes with an LFP pack and an official rated range that seems modest on paper compared to the long-range variant, but you can comfortably leave it at 100% most of the time, your effective daily range could feel very close to that rated figure. By contrast, that longer-range high-nickel pack, if you responsibly keep it around 80 or 90% most days, may effectively narrow the advantage it has over the LFP car in everyday use. So when you fast forward to 2034, the LFP-equipped Model Y might be both healthier and more convenient to live with, despite its humbler trim label. Reliability after the warranty expires is where all of these differences collide. Battery warranties typically run around 8 years with a guarantee that the pack will stay above a certain percentage of its original capacity, often around 70%, though details vary by model and market. Once you hit that time limit, the psychological question looms large for any prospective buyer or second owner. How much time is left before a major battery issue could pop up? Real-world results so far suggest that well-engineered packs, regardless of chemistry, can outlast their warranties by a wide margin if treated decently. But LFP's reputation for cycle life and tolerance to high state of charge gives it an extra edge in perceived durability. In a used listing, LFP pack, 82% capacity remaining, 200,000 miles, is a very different story from high-nickel pack, 71% remaining, history of heavy fast charging, even if both cars are officially still drivable. This is exactly why the used EV market is becoming more sophisticated. A few years ago, many buyers of used electric cars had almost no visibility into battery health. Today, that's changing quickly. Owners are sharing degradation data online. Third-party tools, where compatible and permitted, are helping estimate state of health. Some dealerships are learning how to read internal metrics and present them to customers. In time, listings for used EVs are likely to feature battery health information the way they now highlight mileage and accident history. In that world, just having performance or long range on the trunk will not automatically command a premium. The real power word might be a quieter one, LFP, or a known high-longevity chemistry, paired with documentation that it has aged well. All of this makes the 2026 Model Y buyer's choice more nuanced. Consider the urban or suburban commuter with home charging, who drives 30 to 80 miles a day and takes maybe a few long trips a year. For that driver, a base or standard range Model Y with an LFP pack could be the sweet spot. It may not have the longest EPA range when it's new, but it can sit happily at full charge every night, deliver consistent real-world range, and rack up many cycles with minimal degradation. 10 years later, that car might still feel remarkably close to what it did out of the showroom, at least in terms of range and ease of charging. Now consider the frequent road tripper, maybe living in an apartment with only sporadic access to home charging. For that driver, a larger high-nickel long-range pack can still make sense. The extra capacity makes long journeys more practical, and high-nickel cells paired with good thermal management can handle fast charges well, at least up to a point. But the long-term story for that car is highly sensitive to behavior. Regularly running very low, then fast charging all the way to full in hot conditions will age the pack faster. In 2034, such a car might be showing more noticeable range loss than its LFP cousin, especially if it lived a hard life. If Tesla or others offer a long-range option built around LFP or another high-cycle chemistry by then, that might be the variant that road trippers with an eye on decade-long ownership find most attractive. Cold climates add another wrinkle. Historically, LFP chemistries have shown weaker performance in low temperatures, both in terms of range and fast charging speed. Software can mitigate some of this with preconditioning, and thermal management systems are improving every year. But if you live in a region with long winters and need every mile you can get on those freezing mornings, you may gravitate toward a high-nickel long-range pack in 2026 for its superior cold weather behavior. The trade-off is that, long-term, you'll want to be disciplined about charging practices to protect that pack. For someone whose winter driving consists mainly of short trips around town, with the ability to preheat the car and battery while plugged in, an LFP pack might still make sense and repay you with better longevity. Then there are the buyers drawn to the performance variant. For them, acceleration, handling, and status carry real value. If the performance Model Y 2026 uses a specific high-output pack configuration or a particular chemistry optimized for power, that may bring its own aging profile. The question these buyers will face, perhaps more than others, is whether they're willing to adapt their habits, avoiding constant 100% charges, not abusing fast charging unnecessarily, to preserve the pack's long-term health. Performance that feels thrilling today will matter less in a decade if the car's range has fallen so much that long trips become frustrating or resale value drops sharply. For an enthusiast who leases or plans to keep the car only a few years, that may be acceptable. For a buyer intending to keep a performance Model Y for 10 years or more, understanding the battery type and how it behaves over time could be the difference between a sensational long-term ownership experience and an expensive disappointment. Put simply, you can upgrade wheels, wraps, audio systems, and even some performance characteristics over time. You cannot easily and economically upgrade the main battery pack. In most real-world scenarios, the pack you buy is the pack you will live with for the life of the car. That reality is what elevates battery type above trim in the hierarchy of decisions for the 2026 buyer who cares about long-term value. As we get closer to 2026, there are practical steps prospective buyers can take. Read spec sheets carefully and look for any hints about chemistry, terms like LFP or lithium iron phosphate versus nickel-rich lithium-ion formulations. Pay attention to where your car will be built, as Tesla has historically varied battery suppliers and chemistries by region and factory. Make use of online communities and VIN decoders. EV enthusiasts today already map which battery types go into which models and years, and that knowledge will only expand. If you're buying used in the early 2030s, insist on seeing information about battery health, the range estimate at 100% charge, any logged fast charging history, and where possible, third-party assessments of state of health. The more transparent you can be about the battery, the less you are gambling with your money. In the end, the story of the Model Y 2026 is a microcosm of the broader EV transition. For decades, car buyers have been trained to focus on trim levels, badges, and option packages as proxies for quality and value. In an electric world, an equally important question lives a layer deeper. For the owner who cares about what the car is like at year 10, not just at month 10, it might be wiser to pick the lesser trim with the stronger, more forgiving chemistry than the top trim with a more fragile pack. The market is slowly waking up to this, and that awakening will accelerate as more high-mileage EVs hit the used market with very different battery stories. So if you find yourself, sometime in the next couple of years, sitting in front of a screen and building your ideal Model Y 2026, it's worth pausing before you get swept up in the visible choices. The paint color, the wheel design, the acceleration rating, they're all real and they all matter to how you feel about the car in the short term. But beneath that glossy interface, the choice that will follow you the longest is the one you may not see spelled out: which battery you're actually buying. Long after the thrill of a new trim wears off, the battery is what you and any future owner will be living with every single day.